Okie dokie. So now that you're back and you've studied the to be or not to be soliloquy, um, I want us to continue on. So this is sort of a breaking point for Hamlet. I've already talked to you a little about what it means in the presentation, but this is the point in the story where he decides to commit, where he's still deciding, but where he mostly decides to commit to carrying out his father's revenge. So we have Ophelia come in, and where Ophelia is concerned, Hamlet is a little bit weak, because remember, he really did love her. But here, he's still keeping up the guise of his madness, but he's doing it with sort of a genuine concern for her. So she's trying to give him back all of his tokens, so the letters, a handkerchief, whatever it may be. And he basically keeps pushing her away. And he says, no, just go, leave. And he admits on line 116, he says, I did love you once. And she says, indeed, my lord, you made me believe so. He said, you should not have believed me, for virtue cannot so inoculate our old stock, but we shall relish of it. I loved you not. So now he's switching back and forth. So he had a moment of truth, and now he's going back and forth between his persona of madness and his real self. So we see him kind of commit fully now, and he says, get thee to a nunnery. That's another very famous line. Meaning, why would you want to be he says, why wouldst thou be a breeder of sinners? So why would you want my children? Why would you want to be with me? He says, it would be better had my mother not, better my mother had not borne me, on line 126. So he says, get thee to a nunnery. And at the end of that line, meaning go and be locked away from all men, because you don't want to be in a race of such sinners. And so at the end, he says, where's your father? And you can take this line of one of two ways. You can take it meaning he knows he's being watched by Polonius, or you can take it as a genuine question, where is he? And she says, he's at home, my lord. We know he's not. We know he's actually hiding and watching with the king. He says, let the doors be shut on him so he can play the fool nowhere but his own house. So he doesn't care if Polonius is watching him. He says, good, leave that man there. We don't really need him here. So at this point, Ophelia is freaked out, and she keeps praying, God help him, as he's going crazier and crazier. And she kind of sinks down, and Hamlet leaves, and the king and Polonius come in, and king says, love, I'm on line about 168 now, on page 1148. He says, love, his affections do not that way tend. So no, love is not the cause of his madness. He says, I know what we have to do. We have to send him to England. That's just the answer. Just get him away from us. And Polonius says, he says, okay, but I still think he was in love. I still think so, king. Let's let his mother talk to him. Maybe she can figure it out. And he says, fine. The king says, fine, it shall be so. I'm going to let his mother talk to him. So then we have Hamlet talking to the players, and he's talking to them about, in Act 3, Scene 2, he's talking to them about the nature of acting, which is very interesting if you think about the fact that this is what Shakespeare did for a living. He was not only a playwright, but he was an actor. So he has a bit in here where he's telling them to do the play that he's planned, that he's written some lines for, but do it very naturally. Do it without overacting it, and don't try to go for a cheap laugh. And he says, it offends me to the soul to hear a robustious, periwig-pated fellow tear a passion to tatters. So he's basically saying, it kills me when you have as a human being, to watch this bad, horrible acting where someone is just so over the top. And so it's really interesting if you put that into context with, clearly Shakespeare is saying something here about the nature of actors and acting and putting on a persona. And all of this is tied to Hamlet himself. So it's that's one of the things I asked you to think about. What is Shakespeare really telling you behind the text? That's one of the things that he's definitely doing. So they make this plan, and again, we have a few more mentions of the word nature in here. It's all over this play. So keep looking for those words. So Hamlet says, Horatio comes in, and he says that he's going to help him out. So Hamlet asks, he says, your job is going to be to watch my uncle, and if you confirm what I think I see, then we'll know that he's guilty. So that's what they're going to do. So Hamlet comes in, and he's sit down, and he's getting comfortable, and he's in a kind of a very jokey, jovial mood. So everything that the king and Polonius and the queen say to him, he's got sort of a quick retort back. So he says, king says, how fares you? How do you do? He says, excellent, a faith, of the chameleon's dish, meaning at the time they believed that chameleons ate nothing but air. So he's got nothing, his life is empty, it's just air. So the king basically says, don't fight with me, Hamlet. And Hamlet says, he says, no, the words aren't mine, right? He says, those words that you're repeating back to me aren't mine. And he says, no, they're not mine either, not for now. Meaning they will be when you're dead. So he's kind of threatening here. It's a little bit interesting. And then Polonius comes in, and he says, weren't you an actor, Polonius? And he says, oh, yes, I was pretty good. I was a great actor. He says, what'd you play? He says, I played Julius Caesar. I was killed in the Capitol. Brutus killed me. So I want you to note that little line, because it's a bit of foreshadowing. There are little things Shakespeare's dropping in here as allusions to other plays. So we have everybody sitting down, and he messes with Ophelia, he messes with the queen, and he says, my mother, look how cheerful my mother looks, line 125, and my father died within 2 hours. And she says, nay, not 2 hours, Hamlet, 2 months. He says, oh, really? So long? Meaning he's being very sarcastic, as in, oh, really? 2 whole months before you jumped in bed with his brother? So then the play starts, and basically the play has the exact situation of what happened. We have the adulterous queen, and then we have the uncle character coming in, and the mother is very, very bothered by the actions of this queen character on stage, and she basically says, what are they doing? Why are they doing this? And if you go to line page 1153, around line 182, she says, the queen on the stage says, the instances that second marriage move are base respects of thrift, but none of love. A second time I kill my husband dead, when second husband kisses me in bed. So in other words, I kill my husband not only by killing him, but I kill him every time I am with his brother. So this freaks the queen out, and Hamlet says, what do you think, Mom? And in 1154, she says, the lady doth protest too much, I think, meaning it's not realistic. I don't believe it. So Hamlet knows what he's doing. He's egging her on. And she says, what is this play called? And he says, called The Mousetrap. But it shouldn't bother you, because he says, Your Majesty, we that have free souls, it touches us not. So he says, I know it's a little bit raunchy, but if you have an innocent soul, if you have a clear conscience, it shouldn't bother you. And so then she's pretty upset at this point. And then we get to the part where the uncle character comes on stage, and he pours the poison in the ear of the king character. And at this point, this is exactly what happened. Hamlet's figured out with his father and uncle. So it freaks his uncle out. And he jumps up and he says, come on, give me lights, get out of here, we gotta get out of here. So everybody leaves, and Hamlet's watching him, and he realizes, he says, right on line, he says, upon the talk of the poisoning, Horatio, did you notice him? And he says, I did very well note him. And he basically says, I knew it, he's guilty. So Rosencrantz and Guildenstern come in, and they say that his mother needs to talk to him. And he keeps egging them on, and he keeps saying that they have the ear of his uncle. So they're not coming out of concern. They're coming because they're basically loyal to his uncle. And so at the very end of this whole scene, we have Hamlet, and he is talking about the fact that it's night. And he says, "'Tis now the very witching time of night," around line 386 on 1157, "when the churchyards yawn and hell itself breathes out contagion to this world." So we have again this night becoming something very dark and sinister, and a time when very evil things happen. So Shakespeare is setting up something to happen here. The last time this happened, the ghost came and basically told him about being murdered. So we know something else big is going to happen now that it's night. And he says, "O heart, lose not thy nature." He says, "Don't let not ever the soul of Nero enter this firm bosom." So what he's saying in this part is, I'm going to go talk to my mom. I know she's guilty. I pray that my heart stays innocent enough not to kill her, is what he's saying. Nero is a character who killed his mother. So he says, "Let me be cruel, not unnatural," meaning don't go against nature, don't kill. So again, we have this subject of nature and natural versus being corrupted and poisoned. It says, "I will speak daggers to her, but use none." And then it basically says, if I do this, if I were to kill her, I would poison my own soul completely. And that's not what my father wanted me. He told me not to hurt my mother. So that's the end of Act 3, Scene 2. What I'm going to have you guys do now is you're going to finish up, read Act 3, Scenes 3 and 4. Scene 4 is a big one. It's really important. And as you read, keep in mind that he's had this plan in place, and now he's really starting to let things kind of unravel and come apart. So if you have any questions about it, let me know. Otherwise, go ahead and move on to the next activity.